Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us for the Career Coaches panel. And we're delighted that you're here. My name is Sharon Kane. I'm a 1984 grad, and I work in the Alumni Association and have the responsibility and privilege for determining and resourcing and developing programs for how the university supports our graduates over the life of their career. So it's just wonderful. And I am joined today by three fellow Notre Dame grads who are part of a career coaching team that the university and the Alumni Association make available to all Notre Dame alumni. Our three coaches are part of a team of 14 coaches who combined have coached and supported over 500 Notre Dame alumni members. And they're celebrating their reunion, have carved time out of that celebration to join us this morning. And I'm grateful to each of you for doing that. Thank you. So I want to begin by introducing each of these talented and special individuals. So I'm going to begin with Jade Augustine. Jade and I met when she became an executive MBA student. She graduated in 2013, had a career in human resources, so she was all about how do you identify, recruit, and retain talent. What are the strategies that are involved in that? She worked for Career Builder for a good period of time, and then after her Notre Dame MBA experience, really began her own transition into career coaching, which is a calling that she's felt. So when it comes to coaching leaders and executives and teams, that is Jade's current calling and passion. We're joined by Paul Perez, a 1988 graduate. Paul started his career in the Navy, and he got into coaching actually in the Navy, so he brings that experience into his coaching. He also is an adjunct faculty member with the Center for Creative Leadership, highly regarded organization that gets very deep into leadership development. And so we're delighted to have Paul join us. His practice focuses on coaching executives and leaders and moving into culture. He's seeing a lot, what is the impact that we can have when we really talk about cultures? Because you can have someone who's totally true to their values and skilled, and they go back into an environment that may or may not support that. So that's part of Paul's current practice and focus. Welcome, Paul.
Thank you.
And Theresa Sullivan, is a 1998 grad. She, as I said, is celebrating. Theresa had a corporate career going. You might have heard of some of these organizations, LinkedIn, IBM, Deloitte. So she has that corporate experience. She's had her own coaching practice for 10 years or more. And Jade works really with our younger alumni, people who are earlier in their career, and really focusing on purpose. That is just, as we've heard and read, how do we bring our authentic selves to work? How do we capture and keep that sense of purpose? And so Theresa works with individuals, she works with teams. She's just given so much, each of these have, and supported our alumni so deftly. They have their own coaching practices and have opted into the career coaching program that the Alumni Association offers. So a hearty round of welcome for Jade, for Paul, and Theresa for being here today. So we thought we would start with the current marketplace, right? There's a lot of information out there. We read and hear about how competitive it is for talent, to recruit, to retain talent. We also read a lot about skills, and people are placing a premium on skills. Both the marketplace, employees, people who are hiring are placing a premium on skills, as well as individuals in their work. They're looking to build their skill, and they're looking for those organizations and those positions where they can do exactly that. So I'm going to start by asking Paul to speak to, the mindset and that it takes to be successful. What are some of the skills that are being valued in the marketplace? What are you seeing, Paul, in that vein to have so people are successful over the long term?
Right, and thank you for highlighting that. Long term it's the long game that we play, right? So we live in what the Army War College calls a VUCA world. It's volatile, it's uncertain, it's complex, and it's ambiguous. And the Prussian general von Clausewitz said that no battle plan ever survives initial contact with the enemy. And so what does that mean? Does that mean we don't plan? Does that mean we don't get the technical skills that we need? I mean, every Notre Dame grad knows that that's just table stakes. That's what it takes to get into the game, to get those right skill boxes checked off. Most Notre Dame grads, if not all of them, are smarter than the average bear, right? So they know that part. But once you get in the game, how do you thrive instead of just survive? And that's where, if you want to survive, but not just survive, thrive in a VUCA world, then you have to be curious and you have to love reality. Because the matriculation of people into the world, we go to school and we're told, get the right answers and you'll get the good grades. And back in my era, I'm not sure what it is anymore right now, but back in my era, we had to take SATs or ACTs and we had to get really good scores to get into a place like Notre Dame. So we were graded on how many things we got right. Then we get cast out into the real world and we are taught to be individual contributors up until a certain point where we've maxed out our ability to be great ICs, individual contributors, and then we're told go lead people. And as a career coach, as a coach and executive coach, I get people who come to me and they will admit when it's just one-on-one, I'm scared to death because I don't know how to lead. Nobody taught me how to lead. They took me to a certain point where I was this brilliant IC, and then they said, well, the next logical step for you is lead other ICs.
Yeah, that's so true. If I can just build on that the technical skills, the hard skills, the analytical abilities, that you really need your whole career, but I think most especially early on as an individual contributor. And as we would say in the business school, right, Jade, the hard skills or the soft skills are really the hard skills. Beyond that, it's kind of those things about critical thinking and interpersonal skills. Getting work done with and through other people is a huge transition in anyone's career. So it is the hard skills, the soft skills, the EQ, that emotional intelligence. Are you seeing those things as the marketplace valuing that and individuals needing that over a multi-decade career?
Yeah, it's huge. And Warren Bennis even said that getting the technical skills right will get you in the door, but EQ and the softer skills, the more what are called the adaptive skills in the vertical learning domain, those are what are going to help you thrive and help other people thrive.
Yeah. Any other comments on skills, Jade or Theresa, that what you're seeing and the folks that you're supporting and coaching?
I would just add, I think what I find refreshing on the topic of EQ is that it's much more acceptable and common in conversations. It used to be something that wasn't discussed as much, and now it's integrated into the conversation, and it's embraced and it's encouraged and it's demanded, frankly. So I think it's really great that it's being valued as much as experience or skill.
Yeah, excellent point, right? Yes. Theresa, anything from your experience with some of those earlier in their career? Are they fully focused on the hard skills? Are they developing their soft skills?
Yeah.
That's your domain, yeah.
I would say there's a lot to adaptability. So that's something that for those who can be flexible and who can look at reality, as you say, and then build on it, they tend to do a little bit better than the ones that are kind of stuck in that high school to college to IC achieving, and then between graduation and 5 years out of school, many say, well, what now?
Yeah.
I think I won. This is what I won. Their job, and it's like, what is next? What is my next gold star? And I think it's that looking within, and then finding that what is fulfilling to this individual, rather than what's going to the next promotion or the next achievement. Yes. So I see that being two mindsets that I see a lot.
I think across the career stages, that self-awareness, the research is pretty clear how important self-awareness, self-understanding are. And with that, developing empathy and developing those softer skills that do help you, I think, maintain your own sense of well-being and also enable you to be more effective longer.
Yeah.
So wonderful. Well, Jade, I want to pivot a little bit. Another thing that we're hearing about in the marketplace, of course, and we're living, is this hybrid work schedule and remote working. It's a reality for most of us. And organizations are continuing to focus on, we need to produce, we need to have results, the performance needs to be there. So based on your coaching and your HR background and corporate experience, what are some of the realities of this, and how are people navigating that?
Yeah, it's such a great question, and it's such a hot topic, particularly over the last few years. It's just something that you see articles about, you see on interviews on TV, there's studies that are being done. And when you think about those who have the opportunity to work in a hybrid setting, there are so many benefits to it, right? You have reduced commutes, in some cases no commute anymore. You've got more flexibility with your schedule. You have more time to take care of things like your own well-being and family or interest outside of work. And so there are numerous benefits to having the hybrid arrangement. I would say on the flip side of that coin, there are certain challenges, both for the individual and for the organization. How do we build cohesive teams through a remote or a hybrid setting? How do we give performance feedback in a way that's meaningful when it's through a Zoom screen or through the phone? How do we manage the stress of loneliness? It's even for those introverts out there, it can get lonely sitting in your house and your only coworker is the dog that passes you in the hallways. You go to the break room in the kitchen. It can be really challenging sometimes to have that hybrid arrangement. And so there's so much effort being done, both offering services for individuals. How can you continue to be engaged in your team and in your workplace? And also for organizations to think about what are some ways that they can continue to build a positive culture and reach out to teams, and using new technologies and using new ways to do this new way of working. Because it's not going away. It's shifting and it's evolving. But it is a new way of working, and everybody's trying to figure it out at the same time. Some individuals are realizing, I'm ready to go back into the office, or what is that right balance for me? Is it, a partial work week where it's afforded? Some industries and occupations, you can't be a doctor from home, right? So it depends on the industry that you're in and how you're approaching that. But things like measuring performance, that continues to evolve. Is it based on the output? Are there ways that you can measure that? We're seeing more leaders trying to focus on trust and just establishing an environment that we realize that the work is going to get done, and what resources can we provide for our teams in order to help them work more effectively in that hybrid setting.
Right. I think, that human connection, right? That's very human to want that and seek that out. And I think there's some maybe unforeseen or unintended consequences around, when we're together physically, working side by side in a physical space, we're able to be mentored. We're able to have those collisions, as Dan Coyle calls them, another Notre Dame alum. And so we're seeing that, especially those earlier in their career, they're not connecting with mentors the way they once did, if they're not in the office together to do that. So seeking out those trusted advisors and having those relationships that can be accelerants in the career is very important as well. Mm-hmm. I think this is definitely one to watch. I think at this point, people really expect that flexibility. We've gotten used to that. So, and yet you have companies and leaders of companies saying, we're calling you back, we need you here, we need you, X number of days a week. So that's going to be one to watch.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting how it's evolved even just a short period of time. If you look at job postings out there are filters now for hybrid, remote, on-site, and that didn't used to be a thing. You used to just look at a job description and assume that it was going to be on-site. So even that's changing how people are searching for work. Mm-hmm. And if you're willing to open yourself up to a national or a global setting, you increase the pool of candidates, or there's just so many variables now that are at play that didn't used to be in quite this way.
That's right. Definitely changes recruiting, hiring, retention, development. So yeah, a lot involved there.
Yeah.
Theresa, we're hearing and reading a lot about burnout. Some of us may even have experienced it, or the term languishing, quiet quitting. These are human responses to stress and anxiety. Can you talk a little bit about that and what you're seeing and what some of the anecdotes might be?
Sure. Well, and I'm sure none of you guys have ever experienced burnout or quiet quitting. It's really on the minds right now and in the culture of what is this middle ground between, on one side you have burnout or depression, where you are, having trouble just functioning. And then on the other side of that scale, you've got what positive psychology is calling flourishing. So you're energized, you're excited about what you're doing. It's really, you feel great when you wake up in the morning. And then the vast majority of the American workforce right now is kind of in this middle area. And it's kind of an absence of well-being. So it's not as far as maybe depression or burnout, but there's this idea of languishing and when we are in that place, the anxieties cause some, can cause brain fog, not a lot of motivation. We get kind of stuck in our careers. Working from home and being remote, especially if you're an extrovert, is a thing that can really drive somebody past that point. So I'm seeing that a ton. And of course, the people who come to career coaches are probably not they're usually not at the height of flourishing because they're feeling stuck. So, for coaching, we can really help, the folks who are in that area learn how to find the energy, learn how to find flow, look at other ways to increase that energy instead of deplete it, because that's kind of what's happening. And that's what it all boils down to in the end, really, is, I would say, is energy. And I tell all my clients that it's let's look at where it is, where you're getting it from and where you're losing it. And if you start paying attention to that, and everyone's totally different, has a unique blueprint for that, you start paying attention and you notice it, it's a lot easier to kind of move up that scale toward flourishing and good mental health practices.
Right. I think, we want to be achievers. We want to contribute. We want to have that sense of fulfillment, that we're contributing to our team, to our organization. Sometimes that can be so consuming, and that we're not in harmony with those things that feed us, and we're not really paying attention to how we manage our energy, how we keep it more positive than negative. Any practical tips from anybody on that?
Yeah, well, again, I think most of the battle is just knowing it, is seeing it and naming it, and kind of understanding where your energy is at and why. And I'm sure we all have different exercises and things, and coaches can help people really get to the point where you can say, okay, maybe the reason that I don't want to go to work today is because I'm doing all these things that deplete my energy, and I'm doing nothing. I don't have anything in my life that's building me back
Renewing.
up. Yeah.
Yep.
So it's you can do this on your own. There's plenty of books, and I think that's really one of the greatest parts about coaching, at least that my clients tell me, is, oh, now that I know what it is, I can do something about it. But if you don't know it, it's very hard to get out of that vortex.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's energy assessments out there. I have an energy assessment that I use with clients that is really eye-opening. The first time I took it, I didn't realize to the extent that my energy was getting in the way of me fulfilling other things that were important to me. Because as Theresa was saying, if you feel depleted and down, you're less likely to take action and do these things. And so even just by having that level of awareness, you can address it and then find those little tips and tricks that can help increase your energy, whether it's going for a walk, a simple thing like carving out time, connecting with people, if it's a social connection or emotionally, whatever it might be, and then that adjusts your energy so then it becomes really foundational to everything else that you do. So I think that's a great point, Theresa.
Thanks.
Anything from the executive ranks and the leadership that you're seeing, both from military but also civilian organizations, anything we can glean from their experience, Paul?
Yeah, and this will bleed over into the rest of the discussion, but meaning is a really big issue, and that relates to all kinds of things. It relates to purpose, it relates to clarity, it relates to does what I'm doing matter? And right now we're suffering really from a meaning crisis in the workaday world, and when we talk about energy, what we're really talking about is attention. So what am I focusing on right now? What is my focal energy? And if I'm going to pay attention to something, it has to be emotionally salient. There wasn't a day in the 20 years that I was on active duty in the Navy that we didn't talk about mission. Not one day. Usually multiple times a day. We were always reminding ourselves and each other of the mission. And we were always reminding ourselves and each other of the simple rules that kept our complex system, our complex adaptive systems, they're called, humming. Mm-hmm. There were all kinds of distractions and shiny bells and stuff, but there were just some very simple rules. In the Navy, it was shipmate, self. Right? In the squadron, when I showed up, they said, there's your chief, get under your chief's wing. He calls you sir. At that time, it was in combat, there were only men in combat back then, right? So I was told, get under your chief's wing. Your chief is going to call you sir, but your chief knows the troops and your chief knows the job. And your success as a division officer hinges on how well you allow your chief to mentor you and how well you earn his followership as a leader. And then the second thing they told me is always be training your relief. And that gives you well, I put it this way, success. We have all kinds of mangled definitions for success, but at the root, success requires a successor. If we don't have the next generation, right? In the Bible, I think the Psalm says that one generation shall speak to the next of your marvelous deeds. This thing we're in is a generational thing. And if we're not preparing the next generation of leaders, then the meaning just dissipates. And so mission, meaning, all those things.
Yeah.
And those are really the intangibles, but they're the things that cohere units.
Right. I'm also hearing in what you're saying, about alignment, and the research here is also clear that when our personal value system aligns with the organization and the team we're a part of, that just about everything is possible, right? I can put my energy, my attention, because I don't have to be concerned about them asking or tasking me to do something that is not in alignment with my personal values. It frees up that energy to focus on other things. So that alignment, and I think more and more people are seeking that alignment, which speaks to flourishing, not languishing, working again to avoid burnout, to keep ourselves, in some kind of groundedness. So, excellent points.
If I could, and one thing about that alignment, and my two colleagues spoke to this, it's that emotional safety. Is the organization, have I as a leader, right? Heavy is the head that wears the crown, right? Are the leaders in my organization, or have I as a leader set the tone that I can be called out by my people? Because if I give an order or command or whatever that's out of alignment, my people need to be able to come to me and remind me of the mission. Because sometimes I'll focus, CCL has a 360, and one of the competencies that they rate people on is ignores valuable work to pay more attention to high visibility work. So it's the optics. Am I playing the optics game, or am I really attending to the mission? And leaders are actually, in that 360, they're actually rated on that. So are we paying attention to the main thing?
Yeah, touching on a lot, which is wonderful. I do want to get, tap your wisdom in this whole career management, career transition. So we know people are working longer, we have multiple generations in the workplace. According to the federal government, on average, workers will have 12 jobs over the life of their career. The average tenure for those jobs is about 4.1 years. That is a lot of transition to navigate, right? You're going to need a few things. You're going to need a robust network. You're going to need trusted advisors, coaches, mentors, and at some point, you're going to need actual jobs. And even today, with all of the digital app AI algorithms, it is still the majority of the time, LinkedIn is claiming it's 60% of the time, job opportunities are secured through human contact. It's that human connection that still leads to career success. So when individuals are submitting a lot of apps online to wherever and not hearing back and wondering why, I think those things are at play. So there's a lot to navigate, a lot to unpack there. Paul, a lot of the leaders and executives, they're most successful because they manage their careers for the long term. Mm-hmm. So what is it that, if you had to pick the top couple of things that the most truly successful people are doing, what would you share?
Yeah, one thing is to adopt a long view. Right? My signature on my iPhone is focus on forever. And the other side of that is the definition of short-term thinking is wetting your pants because you're cold, right? But it paints a picture. The other thing is know what the negotiables and the non-negotiables are in your life. And I have found through many thousands of hours of coaching and then also my own journey that the list of non-negotiables should be really small but set in stone, at least for the period of life that you're going through, right? So what are those things that there's a saying that, never go a day without telling somebody you can't live without that you love them or something like that. If you cannot live with the life that violates that non-negotiable, don't even go there. That's the first thing. The second thing is have your list of negotiables and be willing to be courageous. Have some moral courage about discussing it with people. The word interview in the Latin means to see about. And what it implies is that when I go to a job interview, I'm interviewing the person that is interviewing me. I want to know, is this going to be good for my life or is it going to destroy my family if I play that game? Right? Third thing is know when is enough. Know when is enough. Know when to say enough. Because if somebody wants to own your life in the job and it's rooted in insecurity and not in mission-mindedness, then that's a prescription for disaster.
Mm-hmm. Theresa, I'm curious about the advice that you give to those earlier in their career to help guide them, support them in their success. I mean, I'm very much, I'm sure, assuming an achievement mindset, and that can quickly lead to, some habits maybe to overcome. So I'm curious, in your experience, what advice has proven effective for those earlier in their career?
Sure. Well, I have a lot of my classmates here, and you may remember, and I'm sure all of us can remember that first 1 or 2 years out of school and the reality check that is. And then, so when I get the early careerists from through the Alumni Association, a lot of them come with that same question of, I look at their Notre Dame resume and they've been all over the world and they've done all the charity stuff and they've had this really great life up to the time they were 21, and now they're an analyst at a bank, and they're just saying, how did this happen to me? And so the advice that I give them is, good job that you got this job. None of it's wasted. Everything you've done through this time in your life, and I would say this to anybody, none of it is wasted. It's all experience that you're getting, and you get to change your mind. And that's where I think a lot of light bulbs go on, where they think, they come and go, I'm this analyst at this bank. The next step up is, maybe I get this promotion to be a manager. I don't really like banking, or, and I don't know how I'm going to do this for the next 40 years. And it's like, you don't have to. And I remind them there's so much time. Right now it seems like, because they're comparing themselves to their classmates, who's doing what. And it's that kind of stuff where it's, don't compare yourself right now. You have got so much ahead of you. And you can almost see the relief come off when it's like, wait, I'm allowed to do something besides this? Yes. How'd you get this job in the first place? And it's like, I went to the Career Center and they picked me, or this is the only one I could get, or, there's a lot of different stories. And just knowing that doesn't have to define you, that first job out of school, or not having a job out of school is another one that really, maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe this was all a farce. I don't even know how I got into Notre Dame. There's a lot of anxiety about that. And so I think that advice, and I wouldn't even call it advice, it's the questions where they come to the only conclusion of, I don't have to work at a bank, or whatever it is. So that's been great. And I've had people come back and say, you know what, when I looked at it, when I opened the aperture a little bit more, I was able to, do something. And then the second thing is the network. So I'm always telling them the Notre Dame network people get people jobs. So going to lunch with one of your friends from Notre Dame, even if they're not, it's not that you want something from them. It's not that you're trying to get them, but if you're able to verbalize over lunch or in a phone call with a classmate that this is what I'm going through, this is what I want to do next, you would be, and they always are surprised, because it's always like, oh, my uncle or my, people want to help people, especially in this family. And so, to your point about, they say, I've applied on LinkedIn, I get nothing back. It must be my resume. Can you help me with my resume? It's like, it's not your resume. That's not how you're going to get this next thing. It's going to be through people, through mentors, through friends, and when they start having those conversations, and go, okay, I guess I'll, I think usually they're not sure that I'm telling them the truth about, but then when it starts happening, it's like, you wouldn't believe it, and I was like, oh, I believe it. That's how it happens. So
it goes to what you were saying earlier, or what we were saying earlier about technical versus adaptive. It's not what you know, it's who you know, and it's how well have you stewarded those relationships longitudinally. And then that's how you get. That's how you get opportunities.
This reunion, right?
Yeah.
I think all of us here, all these conversations we're having, even over your Miller Lights or your, house wine, can actually lead to the sort of conversations you couldn't dream up. And then you never know. Like, that might be the next career move, or it's where your kid decides to. Yeah. Apply to college, a million things, the things that make your life better. All of these people know something you don't know, and you can get something from them.
I have to say, in my 10 years with the Alumni Association, 21 years here at Notre Dame, it is that connective tissue. We have that shared experience of this university. And so when people do reach out, Notre Dame grads take that phone call, answer that email, have that conversation, and they'll make a call. They'll send an introductory email. They want to help. And I think when you release that sense of competition, when you kind of forego the comparison, that it's freeing. But I have to say, time and again, the Notre Dame network is active, is loyal, is generous, and engages in a spirit of being helpful. And to say, IrishCompass, which is our online professional community, 33,000 strong and growing. That's a combination mostly of alumni, but also students. That is a way to easily identify and make connections via email with individuals who are in the Notre Dame family. And the response rate that we see is twice that of a LinkedIn. And so it is a warmer network. It is a warmer connection, meaning Notre Dame's. So be thinking of your questions. We're going to open it up in a bit. Be thinking of your questions. Don't squander the opportunity to ask the coaches whatever whatever's of interest or on your mind. I do want to talk a little bit about career coaching because, again, from my position, I do get questions. I do see maybe some confusion in the marketplace about what it is or what it isn't. You know, I have a coach. They're going to fix me. They're going to find this. This is going to be corrected. And in speaking to you and working with, you know, our 11 other coaches, I've come to understand that it really is a partnership, that when you engage, it's about accountability, perhaps objectivity, a source of encouragement, maybe some clarity around goals. Those are the kind of things that I've learned from you and the other coaches that really do make for a stronger partnership, a stronger engagement. Jade, earlier you spoke about the role of trust and some of the research that I think It's Optimize You is doing. And, you know, can you talk about career coaching and, you know, what makes a strong relationship there and makes it kind of produce, if I could say that, for the coachee?
Yeah, absolutely. It's such an important topic. And I think so often people think, oh, I'll just get a coach and meet somebody and start working. Right. But there's so much that goes into building and ensuring a trusted relationship as you get started. You know, you could have the most qualified coach that's very capable and a very willing coachee or somebody who's interested in engaging, and yet it might not be the right fit. And so one of the things that's really important when you're considering coaching is exploring the fit between them. So for example, are there particular skills that you're looking to develop, or is there a particular industry that you're looking to break into? And perhaps a coach might have strengths in those areas. And so you'd want to find somebody who could provide some additional insight there. And so part of the process for identifying clients and working together is going through that coach fit process. And you know, I had a conversation with a colleague earlier this week, as a matter of fact, and he is gifting his recent college graduate son with some career coaching. And he said, I'd love for you to work with him. And I said, that's great, love your enthusiasm. And he was ready to, where do I sign? And I said, well, with all due respect, I'd love an opportunity to have an initial conversation with him, just because you find that there's trust between us in this point, and you would like me to work with him. It's still really important for me to talk with him. So I'm talking to his son on Monday, and it's important. I've got some questions that I'll ask of him. I want him to make sure he's comfortable with me, because without that foundation of trust, then the magic doesn't happen as you're working in that coaching relationship. If that trust isn't there, then you're not going to be vulnerable. You're not going to open up. You're not going to share your fears. Just as Paul was saying, I don't know what I'm doing. So if you don't have that relationship early on, you're not going to make the progress in the coaching relationship. So I just think it's really imperative to invest that time up front. If you're considering coaching, talk with a couple people. Between Theresa, Paul, and I, we all have different strengths. We're all passionate about coaching, and we all might offer something a little different. So building that trust early on, I think, is so important.
Right. And you do so well. That chemistry.
Yes.
That, yes, I feel comfortable and confident in this person. I know, Paul, for you, you asked some interesting questions, right? When you think of a real win with someone, successfully coaching, partnering with someone, your questions are like, who are you going to be? Are you going to be at peace?
Yeah.
Are you going to like who you're going to be? Is your family going to like who you're going to be? Those are some kind of mind shift kind of questions. Can you speak to that and why those things, in your view, make for a successful outcome?
Yeah, those are what I call bottom of the swamp questions. And I'm not going to tell the whole story, but it comes from Beowulf, where Beowulf was hired as a coach, as a consultant, really, to solve a problem for King Hrothgar. And he killed Grendel, but then Grendel's mom comes out of the swamp and starts tearing everybody apart. So he has to go after Grendel's mom. And the moral of that story is that if you kill the problem, usually you have to kill what gave birth to the problem before you can actually solve the problem. And so it's a bottom of the swamp questions. These are the things that people existentially they bet their lives on, but they're usually at the subconscious, the implicit level. These are important questions to ask. I've asked these questions. I'll sometimes meet people, really high net worth individuals, 15 minutes in, I'll ask them these questions. They're like, I'm almost 50. No one's ever asked me that question. and they're crying, and they're telling me, I don't even know I'm telling you this because my wife doesn't even know this. So these are important relationship questions to get to know, and then you can build the scaffolding around that.
Yeah.
But what does this mean to you? Why is this important? Is your ladder leaned up against the right building that you've been climbing? Because sometimes we get up there and we go, this isn't the view that I wanted.
Yeah, it's like Simon Sinek's, start with why. What
Yeah.
is the why?
Yeah.
And if you don't know that, how can you get to where you're going? Because there's not clarity there.
Those are very deep, deep kind of questions that people can live a significant part of their life, their career, without actually asking themselves. And that's kind of the mirror, the partnering, some of the accountability, clarity that can come when you have that trusted relationship with a coach. Theresa, if someone is thinking about, do I need a coach? I'm not sure if I need a coach. What are some of the questions we should be asking ourselves to even get to some clarity around that?
Sure. What I see a lot is where somebody gets into a funk, if you will, where they've thought through, brilliant people, they've thought through it all on their own, and they just kind of wind up in the same place. And I think when you get to that point where you're saying, I've done some work, I'm trying to fix this, and it's just not going anywhere. A good coach, a good relationship, I shouldn't say a good coach, it's the good relationship that you put together. This person sees you, and a lot of us don't get seen. And that partnership can help you even just mirror back the stuff you're telling us. We say, okay, so what you just told me is I'm going to summarize this, right? And it's like, well, when you say it that way, it sounds stupid. Yep. And it's like, well, it's not that, it's like you can see yourself suddenly. You can say, that's a silly, why do I believe that? That sort of thing. So, I think it's willing to be a partner with someone. A coach is not, I don't see coaching as I'm going to teach you how to do X, Y, or Z. I'm your teacher, or I'm your mentor either. Like, I've done this, so I'm going to tell you how I did it, and then you can do it. It's more of I look at it as almost like how Sherpas, and climbing Everest, you've got someone who's done it before, but it's your journey, it's your climb, and there's just somebody here holding the oxygen if you need some help on the way up. And I really think a good coach is, and relationship feels that way to people. So the coach isn't doing it for you, and so it's can I have this relationship? Can I be honest with myself and with this person who's my coach? And am I willing to do the work? Sometimes I think people hire a coach thinking, magic wand, she'll fix me. Yeah. She'll just, I'm not going to do anything, but we'll talk for, So if you're thinking about, like, if you're at a point in your career or in your life, again, almost everyone comes to me because of their career, and it's never just that. Right. It's never ever just that, which is great. It's fine. Come to me for your career, but we'll find out what your life is. Your one life. It's holistic. So it's deciding that you could use the help and that you'd be willing to open yourself up to that experience, and that maybe you'd be willing to even face the fear of actually succeeding, because that's also a weird thing. Sometimes people are surprised, what if I get the thing that I want? Like, that's a scary thing, because then what do I do?
We've all thought that.
Right?
No one's immune to that.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's really like an adventure. It's not somebody fixing you. It's not that you're broken. It has nothing to do with that. It's really more, can I have this partner who's totally objective? And that's where our spouses, our parents, our siblings, you tell them your plans to quit your job and to go to, Thailand, and they'll be the first ones probably to be like, are you kidding me right now? Like, that's not going to happen. Well, you can tell a coach that, and maybe you figure it out on your own, and this, you're not going to be judged about, what's going on. So
I think the visual of having a guide, but it's your life, it's your plan, your adventure, I think is helpful. So thank you for sharing that.
If I could add one thing
Sure.
to the Everest analogy, because I love that. And I would say in addition to the oxygen, to me, I view it as, celebrating the small wins. A lot of times people don't realize where there's been progress made. And so a coach is going to see that perspective and take pause and say, look at the progress you've made. You've gone from this elevation to that elevation, or you've really made some progress. And that, even just hearing that, fuels the next step.
Yeah.
And it really provides that motivation and encouragement that you might not otherwise get or realize. And it seems like common sense, but it's oftentimes
Yes.
not something that we do for ourselves. And so a coach is going to see that and propel you to do more.
Right. We all need encouragement. We all do. So we'd love to take some questions. Do you have some questions? We have actually a microphone. I think Peter's going to help us so that you can just please give us your name, your class year, and your question, and we'll get to as many as we can.
Testing. There we go.
Hi, thank you so much. Really interesting panel. I'm Mary Powell Jabaley Thomas from the class of '83, and you talked a bit about recent college grads. Wondering if you could address issues faced by people who are farther along in their careers, and especially the issue of ageism.
Any thoughts? Anyone want to start off?
Yeah, I would say, and I think that's a great question, because I would say the further one is in their career, sometimes the harder it is to make a shift or a pivot, because you feel like you've invested so much into your career up to this point, and there's a lot of uncertainty. There might be financial security. There might be some other things. What are people going to think if I go from this industry to something completely different? So I feel like people can get a lot more stuck and less willing to have the courage. You talked about courage earlier to make a change, and ageism. I think that's a thing. I think people are really aware of those nuances, and I would also say, maybe this is from my optimistic lens, but I feel like on the flip side of that coin, people are more willing. There's a lot of new opportunities out there based on use of technology. It doesn't matter so much about the kind of the traditional career path. But what do you bring to the table? Can you work from somewhere else? And so I think that there's some ways to navigate around the perception of that. And it's hard, but I think that there's some really good tools out there that would help towards that.
I think sometimes it's assessments, that self-understanding and self-awareness we were talking about. It's never too early, never too late, never a bad time to get clarity around our strengths, around our values, around our skill set. And I do think that one of the advantages of having life and career experiences is around a comfortability level of talking to other people, networking, having informational interviews, making those connections that could lead. And then I think it's also one of the challenges can be us envisioning ourselves in something else, in some other way, in some other organization, doing something else.
And I would add, that's a great point, Sharon, and I would also add a great tool in coaching is reframing. So rather than thinking, am I too old, or am I not going to be seen for my qualities because of my age, how can you reframe that thought? What value do I add because I have the experiences that I've had, or what are some attributes that perhaps I have that someone else might not? So it takes some mental finesse to be able to shift that mindset, but I think that that's really valuable rather than leading with that. And I'm not saying that you are, of course, but I think there's just some ways that you can reframe your thoughts that can help overcome that fear of, well, it must be because of that.
Speak a
Yeah.
little bit to that too.
Yeah.
Because I do coach a lot of people who are more senior, because I'm kind of senior myself. I've coached all along the spectrum, but I've coached people well into their 60s who, big corporations, who are looking at that. They ask that question, am I still relevant? And what I found, Mary, is that, and there's a guy named Brooks out of Harvard who does some really great research on this, and he's a Catholic spiritualist. I think it's Alfred or Albert?
Arthur Brooks.
Arthur Brooks, right. I knew it was an A. And he talks about there are other ways to frame this model. I'm going to frame it like this. There's a horizontal learning domain or horizontal development domain, and then there's the vertical domain. And the horizontal domain is what we've been talking about before. It's the technical skills. Do I know how to do X? Do I have my CPA? Do I have this? Do I have that certification, Cisco certification? Do I know to pivot an Excel, spreadsheet, that kind of thing? Those are the technical skills. Then the more adaptive skills are the wisdom, the discernment, the ability to be calm under pressure, to be able to look at the big picture, to step back, slow your thinking down, and not jump to conclusions, right? I mean, even that metaphor, jump to conclusions, means I'm just going to skip right to the end. If you think about the metaphors that we use in life are really important. They betray what we think. But I think from an ageism standpoint, and when I work with my older clients, I tell them, what are the assumptions, or I ask them, what are the assumptions that you're working under? Are you asking the right questions of the marketplace that you're operating in? Are they valuing you for really what you bring to the table, which is a lot more what I call aegis, mentorship, wisdom, and this is what Brooks talks a lot about. We develop we have these superpower skills in the world of wisdom development that are just not available to younger people because they just haven't, experience is what programs us and reprograms us. We can't think our way into a better life. We have to live our way into better thinking. And so it's that experience. And are you asking the right questions? Are you having the courage to ask the right questions of the marketplace that you're in and say, what do you really want from me here? What are you valuing? And sometimes, unfortunately, it's not a good fit because there are a lot of really narrow-minded people who are just focused on quarterly. I mean, remember when we were young, when it was annual reports? Now it's quarterly reports and earnings. The whole dynamic of the marketplace has changed, and that's one of the reasons why I say sometimes we just need to know when's enough, right? And it's a competing pressure, because Jade talked about it. What if we need money? What if we need to work? Yeah, and not an easy thing to answer. Yeah.
Another question? Anybody have another question? Yes, sir. We'll get the mic to you, and please state your name and class year and your question.
So I'm David from '03. Under the topic of reframing and fulfillment, I want to ask you about lawyers, because mid-career lawyers are an interesting breed. I mean, they lead teams, they make judgments, they craft narratives, they do this creative thinking. And like, some people are happy to stay in that craft, but some people start thinking, I want to think bigger, I want to lead bigger teams. How do you adapt? And so for somebody who's like has a set of skills but doesn't know where the ladder's supposed to be, you know what I mean?
That's where I think having some trusted advisors, many people speak about having kind of your own board of advisors, those people who are close to you, who you trust. It might include mentors, other advisors. It might include a coach that can help you unpack some of that in clarity. I do think left to our own devices, most of us think narrowly because we know what we've done and what we prepared to do. And sometimes the challenge can be in seeing things differently, thinking differently, and to that reframing. So there could be a role for a coach, for a mentor, for advisors. All of the above could help with that, because sometimes we need that objectivity, we need a mirror, we need a little bit of distance and guidance in the same time.
Yeah, I haven't coached a ton of attorneys. I have a lot of attorney friends and colleagues, but I've coached a lot of people in the CPA and accounting world, the professional services world. And they bill in 6-minute increments, just like you guys do. And so how do we break out of that narrow mind and then teach them to be more, to put more things in their tool belt? And that goes back to what I said earlier about being curious, asking a lot of questions. And what Sharon said is really important. Find people who have the life that you think you want, that are 5-10 years down the road, and ask them out for a coffee. Pick their brains. When did you make the inflection? A lot of what we really need is not so much the right answers, but we just need the permission. A lot of us really need permission to make the move. We need permission to take the risk. And it's more of a social emotional thing than it is, did I have the right? I mean, you will need to go back. If I need a certification to this or do that, obviously, but talking to a lot, socializing these things really lifts your imagination that it can be possible.
Great. I hope that was helpful to you. We'll have to leave it there just for time, but I want to say again, the Alumni Association is committed to supporting our alumni over the course of their career. We want to be of good help and support, and we recognize the value of the Notre Dame network. So our role is to make sure the network is there and connected, and we do what we can to keep it as active as people voluntarily, they have that inclination. These 3 coaches are on a team of 14 coaches. All of them are found on IrishCompass. All of them are Notre Dame grads, highly experienced and talented, very compassionate, certified, and known and vetted by me and the Alumni Association. So we organize the coaches by career stage. We think it matters most what career stage you are, more than what industry you're in, or certainly your geography. We're one of the only schools I know that takes that approach, but it works. And again, the team combined has coached over 500 of our Notre Dame grads. So I'd encourage you to find them on IrishCompass, connect them, file it away for yourself, for children, for other Notre Dame graduates who you think it might be helpful. And we'd love to get your feedback on this session using the QR code. But please help me thank Jade and Paul and Theresa for their time and wisdom today. Thank you all. Thank you so much.
Sharon, do you want to tell them how they can get the consultation?
So there is, as part of the program, you can have a complimentary coaching session, and then the services that the coach offers that you connect with are at very special rates. So we've done our part to make sure that it is of high value, and again, I can't emphasize enough how skilled and compassionate and talented these coaches are. And just to give a very, very quick visual, for those of you on IrishCompass, it's irishcompass.nd.edu. There's a coaches tab right here, coaches and mentors. And so you join by your career stage. If I'm an early careerist, that's 4 to 9 years or more, I'm a mid-senior, you can go ahead and you can see our career coaches. Here's Jade right here, right? And I can connect to her. So these are just really, really, as I said, wonderful, wonderful individuals who have opted in for this program because they want to support their Notre Dame alumni. So thank you all. Thank you.
Thanks for coming.